What up, African family, and welcome to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. And welcome back to my series, African Myth and Legend 101, where I tell various stories from African myth and legend. Today, we're going to tell the Sotho myth of Ditaolane, the mythic hero with supernatural powers. And as always, don't forget to support the home team on patreon.com and go to Afrogrpahics.com, a website where you can get helpful illustrative infographics on African history. Links to Patreon and Afrographics are in the description box below. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Once upon a time, there appeared in our country a huge, shapeless thing called Kamapa. It swallowed every living creature that came in its way. At last, it came through a pass in the mountains into a valley where there were several villages. It went to one after another and swallowed the people, the cattle, the goats, the dogs, and the fowls. In the last village was a woman who had just happened to sit down on the ash heap. She saw the monster coming, smeared herself all over with ashes, and ran into the calves' pen, where she crouched on the ground. Kamapa, having finished all the people and animals, came and looked into the place, but could see nothing moving, for the woman being smeared with ashes and keeping quiet still, it took her for a stone. It then turned and went away, but when it reached the narrow pass or neck at the entrance of the valley, it had swelled to such a size that it could not get through and was forced to stay where it was. Meanwhile, the woman in the calves' pen, who had been expecting a baby shortly, gave birth to a boy. She laid him down on the ground and left him for a minute or two, while she looked for something to make a bed for him. When she came back, she found a grown man sitting there, with 2 or 3 spears in his hand and a string of divine bones, called Ditaolane, around his neck. She said, "Hello, man. Where is my child?" And he answered, "It is I, mother." Then he asked what had become of the people and the cattle and the dogs, and she told him, "Where is this thing, mother? Come out and see, my child." So they both went out and climbed to the top of the wall surrounding the calf's kraal, and she pointed to the pass, saying, "That object, which is filling the neck, as big as a mountain, that is Kamapa." Ditaolane got down from the wall, fetched his spears, sharpened them on a stone, and set off to the end of the valley where Kamapa laid. The beast saw him and opened its mouth to swallow him, but he dodged and went round its side. It was too unwieldy to turn and seize him, and thus the mighty Ditaolane drove one of his spears into Kamapa. Then he stabbed Kamapa again with his second spear, and it sank down and died. He took his knife and had already begun to cut it open, when he heard a man's voice crying out, "Do not cut me." So he tried in another place, and another man cried out, but the knife had already slashed his leg. Ditaolane then began cutting in a third place, and a cow screamed, and someone called out, "Don't stab the cow." Then he heard a goat bleat, a dog bark, and a hen cackle, but he managed to avoid them all, as he went on cutting, and so, in time, released all the inhabitants of the valley. There was great rejoicing as the people collected their belongings, and all returned to their several villages praising their young deliverer, the mighty Ditaolane, saying, "This young man must be our chief." They brought him gifts of cattle, so that between one and another he soon had a large herd, and he had his choice of wives among their daughters. So he built himself a fine hut or a kraal, and married and settled down, and all went well for a time. But the unintentionally wounded man never forgot his grudge, and long after his leg was healed, he noticed signs of discontent among the people. To drop a cunning word here and there and encourage those who were secretly envious of Ditaolane's good fortune, as well as those who suspected him because, as they said, he could not be a normal human being. And thus this unintentionally wounded man began to give voice to the people's feelings. So before long, they were making plans to get rid of their chief. They dug a pit and covered it with dry grass. They kindled a great fire in the courtyard, intending to throw him into it, but a kind of madness seized them. They began to struggle with each other and at last threw in one of their own party. The same thing happened when they tried to push him over a precipice. In this case, he restored to life the man who was thrown over and killed. Next, they got up a big hunt, which meant an absence of several days from the village. One night, when the party were sleeping in a cave, they induced the chief to take the place farthest from the entrance, and when they thought he was asleep, stole out and built a great fire in the cave mouth. But the mighty Ditaolane came out and was standing among them. After this, feeling that nothing would soften their hatred, he grew weary of defeating their strategies and allowed them to kill him without offering any resistance. Some Sotho, when relating this story, add, "It is said that his heart went out and escaped and became a bird." Well, I'm all guys. If you like these videos and want to help out in its continued production, you can support the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself, remember your ancestors. Peace.